Hello, gang. Tattoo Biker here with you. And I'm going to try and keep this intro brief as we got a lot of road to cover tonight because we're going international with this one. First, an Oklahoma teen sees a terrifying, red-eyed creature staring in their window. And then I have a report from upstate New York where a witness describes a sighting that his partner had. And then an encounter that he himself had with an upright, goat-like creature. And next, the girlfriend of an experiencer contacts me, describing her boyfriend's encounter with a bizarre, massive man-deer creature while driving home one night. And finally, did a group of soldiers in El Salvador actually encounter a giant while out on patrol? You don't want to miss this one. So buckle your saddlebags, grab your boots, and let's ride.
Number 1. Dear Tattooed Biker, I saw something that I still can't explain. I was 15 years old then, 47 now, so pretty long ago. I'd been asleep on a school night. I woke up feeling like my mouth was sandpaper dry. I went to the bathroom for water, and when I came out, I was facing my bedroom's west window. We lived on 16 acres. And the only space around the house was kept mowed. Everything else just grew wild, and this was around 2 or 3 a.m. The first thing I saw was the reflective eyes. Red. It wasn't brilliant, like a red light shining, but more muted, like a reflection. There wasn't anything on that side of the house. I went to the window to see what could be out there, and that's when I saw it. Standing perfectly still where the yard edge met the tall brush. Standing slightly sideways, I could see the front arm hanging down, staring directly at me, staring right into my eyes. It didn't look like a deer standing on its back legs. We always saw deer around our property, and, well, this wasn't that. This was something else entirely. I remember the fear that went through me. Overwhelming and hard to breathe because it was watching me. This was pre-internet, so I'd never even heard of things like a skinwalker, but I knew what demonic meant, and this thing was definitely demonic. I could see its breath because it was a cold night, so there was condensation clouds as it would exhale. Other than breathing, it didn't move at all for a solid 5 minutes. I remember stepping off to the side of my window, hoping to still see it, but hopefully it wouldn't be able to see me. It didn't move, though. It just continued to stare at my window. After a bit of this, it turned and walked into the tall brush. It walked just like a man, not like a deer standing on back legs. I was shaking from fear, and I remember going to sleep in my older brother's room. He, of course, was annoyed with me the next morning and asked why I was in there. I told him what I saw and described it in detail. After getting ready for school, we went outside to that side of the house, and we could actually see the path that the creature took away from the house. Just some brush that was pushed down as someone had walked through grass that hadn't been touched in a long time and parted it. There were no footprints or hoof prints or whatever. The brush was too tall and thick to see something like that. But the brush was about my head height, which was a little over 5 feet at the time. So this thing stood a good 2 feet taller because, well, I could see its chest, head, and shoulders as it walked away. I remember asking my brother if he remembered this night, and he said he remembers it vividly. I've never seen this creature since. I've seen other odd things, but never anything like this. We lived in Payne County, Oklahoma at the time, out near Stillwater. Thanks. Signed, Anonymous. Number 2. Hello, Biker Sir. I've watched some of your videos on YouTube, and I thought I'd send this to you. I live near Whitehall, New York. One night, my partner was out taking the garbage and came back inside startled and shaken. They said that they had seen a creature that looked like a fox or a coyote, but then it stood up on its hind legs, so they booked it back inside. Fast forward to about a month later, and I'm outside on my porch, smoking a cigarette. We have a small plot next to our house that has a tow-behind landscaping trailer permanently parked on it, about 20 feet away from the house. After a while of standing outside, I get the sudden and overwhelming urge, like something is watching me. The feeling of danger and the urge to run. It should be noted that, like most people up here, I'm usually carrying a gun on me. There's lots of wildlife and predators, so I kind of check my surroundings. When I look over to that trailer, I saw there was something, what looked like the size of a large dog, lying in the grass. Now, mind you, it's a clear night, with an almost full moon, and the grass was uncut, long but not like a meadow, about 8 inches high, so I was getting a really good view of this thing. Now, I know never to approach a random animal that's bedded down for the night, so I just kind of watch it for a second. Even in the light of the moon, its outline and coat were pitch black, unnaturally contrasting against the ground that it lay on. Then it looks up, and it has these piercing red eyes. I'm thinking, what the hell? And I drop my hand to my revolver. And then this thing, it stood up. It stood up on its hind legs. The only way I can describe the legs is like that of a goat, human hybrid from the Narnia movie, but with the torso of a man. It also had these huge, curved horns on its head. It was much taller than me, and I'm 6'1". And it didn't even need to take a step. I backed away to the door, locked and bolted it, and spent the rest of the night wondering what I'd just seen. Now, I'll admit, I'm a religious man, Muslim, but that thing didn't fit the description of any jinn that I've ever heard of. It's to this day one of the few things in my life that I just cannot explain. We've installed security cameras since then, but now the lot is under construction and we haven't seen it since. I don't know what I saw that night, but I intend to find out one way or another. I want to go into the forest near the plot and look around for some evidence, but I'm really unsure what I'm really going to look for. Signed, Chucker. Number 3. Dear Biker, this story isn't a joke. Trust me, I thought it was at first too. My boyfriend saw something that he can't explain. It was New Year's Eve, and he was driving home from my house after dropping me off for my date night, so it was around 1 a.m. We live in southeast Kentucky, and I was lying in bed scrolling on my phone when I get a call from him. I didn't think anything of it, assuming he was calling because he was bored on his drive home or something. I answered it, sort of half asleep, when he told me that he just saw something terrifying and he didn't know what to do. He says, "Listen, I know this sounds insane and I can't tell anyone else because no one will ever believe me, but I'm scared." Now, you should know that my boyfriend doesn't get scared often. He's rational. He views everything with statistics and science. He doesn't believe in the paranormal. I thought he was just messing with me, that he was trying to scare me or something. I told him to explain what happened. He says, "I was driving down the interstate and saw this deer, but it wasn't a deer. It was huge. At first, I thought it was just a really big deer, but as I got closer, I realized that deer don't get that big. Elk don't even get that big." It was at this point that I realized that he was telling the truth. His voice was actually shaking, and he was talking frantically. I had never heard him that scared before, and he continued. It was hunched over, and it looked like a really big man, but it had a deer's antlers and fur all over it. I thought I was imagining things until I looked in my rearview mirror after I drove past it, and it was still there, and the other cars were actually swerving away from it, so they saw it too. That night, he didn't sleep. He kept a loaded gun by his bed and watched the security cameras around his house all night. And then last night, we were talking about it again. As he was talking, his eyes kept darting around, and he would check behind us every 30 seconds or so. That's when he gave me a better description of it. He said it stood about 8 feet tall, and it looked like a man, hunched over with his hands on the ground. It had a human face and these massive deer antlers. He said it stood upright just as he passed it, and it stood to be about 12 feet tall. Again, it was covered in fur, and it didn't stand on 2 legs like a deer. It stood like a man, and it was just standing there at the interstate, watching the cars go by. And here's where things get really wild. His house is about a mile from the interstate, with some woods separating them. Now, he's explored these woods before, and he was telling me about a bridge in the woods that he had explored before, and it shouldn't technically be there. Every bridge in the state of Kentucky is registered with a serial number, but this one wasn't. He described it like it looked brand new. There wasn't a bit of rust, and the stone and metal were pristine, and there were no graffiti. Under that bridge, there was a tunnel. Now, this tunnel would logically be a drainage tunnel, but it was always bone dry. He doesn't know how long it is, but he knows that this tunnel is at least 2 miles long. He said it has been a couple of years since he's been there, and he doesn't want to go back. He thinks that the thing that he saw was from there. He said that bridges are supposed to be registered, but it isn't in the Kentucky registry. Everything about that bridge is just wrong, and something about it reminded him of the thing that he saw in the interstate. He told me there's only been one other experience in his life like this. It was right when he turned 17, and he was out alone, hunting in the woods. If you've never been hunting before, then you can see the woods wake up around you. As the sun rises, the birds wake up, and the squirrels come out, begin to run around. And then the deer come out for dinner, since they're nocturnal. He told me this time that nothing was there. The birds weren't chirping, and there was nothing in sight. The leaves were absolutely still because there was no wind, and everything was dead silent, except for the sound of his own breathing. It was around noon, and he decided something was off, and he just left to go home. He told me that he didn't think much about it then, but now it genuinely scares him to think about that day. Has anyone out there ever seen anything like this before? I thought at first it might be someone pulling a prank, but I know I've never heard my boyfriend sound like that before. I believe him, and I believe there was something there that night that's unexplainable. And I need someone to confirm that we aren't crazy. I just need some sort of explanation. Signed, Lynette.
Quick narrator's note here. I reached out to this witness, asking if what he's seen could possibly be not a deer, and casually mentioned that as unnerving as they are, with mental trauma aside of course, I personally have never received a report where a not a deer physically harmed anyone. I also asked some more questions about that mysterious bridge, and she responded.
Hey, biker. Thank you for your response. I'm starting to believe that what he saw was a not a deer. We talked about it, and I was telling him what a not a deer was, and he said that that could be it. For those who believed that it could have been a person pulling a prank or a person in a costume, well, it was 28 degrees at 1 a.m. At the moment, I'm not able to go out to that bridge. I'm dealing with a lot health-wise that is making it difficult to get out of the house at all. At some point, I will check that bridge out. Sadly, it won't be as soon as you hoped for, and I'm sorry. But thanks again for reaching out. Signed, Lynette. Number 4. Hey TB, This story was told to me by my uncle, and he swears that it really happened. He was the only one in the family that this happened to, so no one else could back up his story. And hearing it and thinking about it, I still don't know if I believe this myself. In 1979, there was a 12-year-long civil war in El Salvador. My uncle was in the military. He was sent into the jungle with 6 other guys on patrol to look for military groups that were supposedly camped out there. After walking through the jungle for hours, they suddenly felt the ground shake as if something big was coming towards them. He described it like in Jurassic Park when the T-Rex was coming at them and the water was rippling. He said that they thought it was the enemy doing something, so they immediately hid. He was shocked when he saw a real-life giant. He said that it was walking in the distance. I asked him if it was maybe just a really, really big person like Bigfoot or something, and he said no. It was more of a Jack and the Beanstalk kind of giant. He said that trees were blocking the view a bit, but that he could make out that it was just a really big human. He said that it was as tall as the tallest tree there. He said he tried to get a good look at it, but he was honestly terrified and didn't want to get out of his hiding spot. He said that the giant basically just walked past them. He said they were all terrified and waited there for a while, as they were scared to bump into another one. He said 2 of the guys suggested to try and kill it and get rich, but the guy in charge told them to stand down. My uncle said everyone thought they were idiots for even suggesting such a thing. He said after that they walked back to base as quickly and quietly as possible. They told everyone when they got back, and no one believed them. They were friends with the pilots, and the pilots called bullshit on their story because they fly over that jungle all the time and would have seen such a creature, especially if it was as tall as the trees, as they claimed. He said all of the guys described what they saw. One guy claimed that it appeared to be bald, and another guy said he thinks it had some sort of loincloth like Tarzan. My uncle emphasized that he didn't get a really good look, but he confirms that he saw what appeared as a giant human walking in the distance, and that was so big that it actually shook the ground, just like it was coming at them. He said he got down and hid and just waited until it was gone. I began to ask him things like, if it was real, don't you think they would have found a body or some bones of something that big? Especially since El Salvador is so tiny about other parts of the world. He responded along the lines of, I don't know about none of that stuff. I just know what I saw that day. I personally don't know how I feel about this. This one seems a little bit out there. My mom said that maybe it was some sort of spirit that just made itself appear as a giant to scare them. During the Civil War times, my mom claims that there was a lot more paranormal things going on because of all the death that was happening. A lot of innocent people were getting killed, and my grandma would say that if you looked out the window of the house, you could see the bodies of the dead littering the street. That wouldn't explain the ground shaking, though. Has anyone out there ever encountered a story of a Jack and the Beanstalk kind of giant? This one scared me as a kid because it's so unbelievable that if he actually did see that, it's absolutely crazy. Thanks. Signed, Miguel. And there it is. 4 true cryptid encounter stories from real viewers. And just to clarify, when I asked Lynette for more details about the bridge, I was curious if her boyfriend had any more information. I certainly didn't want her to actually go out there herself. I never want to encourage anyone out there to put themselves in a possibly dangerous situation just to satisfy my curiosity. If I want to know something that badly, I'll just make the ride myself. Alright. I'm anxious to read your thoughts and theories about these in the comments below, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And anyways, thanks for riding with me tonight. Really appreciate all of you. And please, stay curious, stay vigilant, Stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.